The story starts with some explorers in the South Atlantic Ocean. On their ship, there was a weather officer named David. His job was to tell us about the weather. They were traveling to an island in the middle of the ocean. The government sent David there to study the weather changes on that island. He had to stay there for 1 year and then return after collecting all the data. David was given enough food and supplies for the whole year. After many days of travel, they finally reached the island. They used a boat to land there. The island was empty, no people, no animals, not even birds. On the island, there was only a lighthouse and a small house. David had to live there. Before him, another weather officer named Robert had lived on the island. But now his duty was finished. He had lived alone on this island for a year, collecting weather data. Now it was David's turn to stay on the island for a whole year, while Robert was supposed to return with the ship. But when the team went inside the house, they were shocked. There was no sign of Robert. His things were lying scattered all around the room. The captain and David thought maybe he was in the lighthouse. So, without wasting time, they went there. But what they saw was strange. The lighthouse was surrounded by sharp wooden spikes, like someone had blocked it on purpose so nobody could enter. They knocked on the lighthouse door many times, but no one answered. Finally, they pushed the door open and went inside. There, they found a man named Gruner. When they asked him about Robert, the old weather officer, Gruner said that Robert had died. He went into the sea one day but never came back. Hearing this, both David and the captain were shocked. The captain then told David that if he wanted, he could still return with them. But David refused. He thought that if he gave the government correct weather reports of this island, he would earn a lot of money. Before leaving, the captain gave David a gun for protection and warned him, "This place doesn't look safe. Take care of yourself." Then the captain and his team left, saying they would come back after 1 year. After they left, David cleaned the house and made it ready to live in. That night, he found a diary inside a drawer. It belonged to Robert, the old weather officer. In the diary, Robert had written many things about the island. Some parts of the diary talked about a strange creature, but the writing was not complete and clear. There were also drawings of strange animals. David didn't understand why Robert had made such drawings. Maybe he was lonely and did it to pass the time. On one page, there was also a photo of Robert's wife. After reading for a long time, David felt tired and slowly fell asleep. The next morning, he started collecting weather data, but when he reached the sea, he stopped. He saw some stones arranged in a strange way, with seashells placed between them. Looking at this pattern, David thought maybe Gruner had made it. Then he went back to his work. Later, while working, David looked through the telescope at the lighthouse. To his surprise, he saw another person standing with Gruner, but in the blink of an eye, that person disappeared. David tried to see again, but then thought it was just his imagination. That night, while David was busy working, he suddenly heard a knock on the door. He thought it must be Gruner. David called out his name, but no one answered. As he moved closer to the door with a lamp in his hand, he heard a strange sound. It didn't sound human at all. Then, from under the door, he saw the hand of a strange creature trying to come inside. It was not a human hand. David was shocked. He quickly ran to the basement and hid there. Soon, the strange creature entered the house. It was quietly searching for him. David peeked at it through a small crack in the basement. But when David moved a little, the creature noticed him. It rushed toward him and tried to grab him through the crack. To save himself, David picked up a knife and stabbed the creature in the eye. The creature screamed loudly and ran away. But David knew it could return any time. Now he was sure that whatever Robert had written about the creature in the diary was true. David couldn't sleep all night because of fear. The next morning, when he stepped outside the house, he saw strange footprints in the sand. They didn't look human at all. The footprints led directly into the sea. At that moment, David understood why Gruner had placed sharp wooden spikes around the lighthouse. He realized that if he stayed in the house, the creature could kill him anytime. Scared, David ran to the lighthouse and shouted for Gruner to open the gate so he could come inside. But Gruner refused. He told David, "You should have gone back with the ship." Then Gruner even poured water on him and asked him to go away. He didn't want David near the lighthouse. Sad and disappointed, David went back. Now he had to protect himself. He covered all the windows of his house with wooden boards. He made a fence of sharp sticks around the house. Near the gate, he placed old papers and books and poured oil on them, so he could set them on fire to scare the creature if it came again. But there was one thing David still didn't know, and he was about to find out tonight. While searching the house, he was lucky to find an old box. Inside, there was a gun and many bullets. Seeing this gave David a little hope of survival. As the sun began to set, David's fear grew stronger. Soon, night came and darkness was everywhere. David sat quietly in a corner of the house, holding the gun tightly in his hands. His heart was beating very fast. Then suddenly, he heard a strange sound. When he looked out of the window toward the sea, he was shocked. Not just one, but many strange creatures were coming out of the water toward him. Soon, they all gathered around his house and began trying to break the door. David quickly started shooting with his gun. Some bullets hit the creatures, and a few of them fell down and died. David thought the gunfire would scare them away, but instead, the others became even angrier after seeing their companions die. So, David used his backup plan. He set fire to the papers and old books he had placed outside the gate. The flames scared the creatures, and they ran back to the sea. But now the fire spread to David's house. Since the house was made of wood, the door caught fire and the flames started spreading quickly. David wrapped himself in a sheet to protect his body and escaped outside. He hid behind a big stone near the lighthouse. While shooting earlier, David had also received a deep wound in his hand. Suddenly, heavy rain began to fall. Slowly, the fire started to die down. But by morning, after raining all night, David could not save his house. It was almost completely burned to ashes. Now, if David wanted to stay alive, he had only one option: to take shelter in the lighthouse. He picked up his rifle and hid among the rocks near it, waiting for Gruner to come out to fetch water. When Gruner finally came out, David followed him. But suddenly, a strange creature near Gruner attacked David. Somehow, David managed to fight it off. He was about to shoot the creature when Gruner quickly stopped him and shouted, "Don't! It's my pet!" David lowered his gun but then gave Gruner a condition. If he wanted to keep the creature alive, he must let David stay in the lighthouse. Otherwise, David would kill it. Gruner agreed because David had lots of food and gunpowder. So, before evening, both of them went back to the lighthouse together, carrying the remaining supplies. That night, they slept peacefully. The next morning, David felt something licking his injured hand. When he woke up, he was shocked. The creature had licked his wound, and it was completely healed. David was amazed by what he saw. He wanted to know more about it from Gruner and dreamed of showing it to the world. David thought that if they revealed the secret of this creature, both he and Gruner could become rich and famous. But Gruner didn't want that. He didn't want to leave the island at all. He had no family or anyone left in the world. For him, this island was perfect. Here, he felt like a king, free to do whatever he wanted. That's why he had written in many places on the island, "Gruner is the king here." David couldn't understand why such a powerful creature meant nothing special to Gruner. Then Gruner explained. Long ago, he had once saved the creature's life. She had been caught in his fishing net when she was small. From that day onward, she stayed with Gruner and obeyed whatever he said. But Gruner was a harsh man. He treated the creature badly. He even forced her into physical relations every day. He told David that once the creature had attacked him, and in return, he punished her so badly that after that she started seeing herself as his slave. Then Gruner explained why the creatures came out of the sea every night. They came to rescue their partner and take her back, but Gruner never allowed it. The creatures couldn't attack during the day because sunlight burned their skin. Hearing all this, David didn't want to stay on the island anymore. He wanted to escape somehow. That evening, Gruner told him to get ready with the gun because the creatures could attack at any moment. Gruner also prepared to turn on the lighthouse light. Soon, a huge number of creatures came out of the sea and started moving toward the lighthouse. Gruner kept firing at them non-stop, but David was very scared. He ran inside the lighthouse and, instead of helping, he sat quietly in a corner. After some time, he fainted. Gruner fought the creatures alone the whole night. The next morning, Gruner angrily poured water on David's face to wake him up. He told David, "If you want to stay alive, you must fight and kill these creatures. Otherwise, I will throw you out of the lighthouse. You will also have to obey me, bring water every day, do the lighthouse chores, and guard with me at night." David had no other choice, so he was forced to do everything Gruner ordered. He started following Gruner's commands. But there was one thing David hated. Gruner would torture the female creature in different ways every day. One night, when it was time for guard duty again, the creatures came out of the sea. But this time David was not afraid. He picked up his gun and started firing at them. But Gruner didn't help. Instead, he locked David outside the lighthouse and sat quietly inside. He wanted David to learn how to fight the creatures on his own. That whole night, David fought the creatures. By morning, when Gruner opened the gate, he saw David sitting outside, covered in blood. But now David had learned how to fight them. Time went by like this. David fought the creatures at night and did all of Gruner's lighthouse work during the day. For David, the island had become like a prison. He kept wondering when he would be free and leave this place. As time passed, David started feeling a strange connection with the female creature. He felt bad for her. Now he understood the pain of being separated from one's own people. Maybe the creature also felt the same way. David even gave her a name, Anarius. Days passed, and soon David noticed that the creatures were attacking less often. He thought maybe they went somewhere else during winter, and maybe they realized there was no point in fighting. But Gruner told him that this was not true. The creatures were only increasing their numbers. They would attack again, and it would be even worse. A few more days passed. One night, after dinner, David and Gruner started playing chess to pass the time. But then Gruner made a big mistake. They got so lost in the game that they forgot to switch on the lighthouse light. Because of the darkness, the creatures attacked. This time, their numbers were so large that even both men together couldn't fight for long. They also had no plan ready. David's bullets were almost finished. While running for safety, David somehow reached the top of the lighthouse. But Gruner was badly hurt. His leg was deeply injured by the creatures. It seemed like the end for both of them. But then, morning came. As the sun rose, the creatures left the lighthouse and went back into the sea. When the hot sun was shining, Anarius came close and tried to heal Gruner's wound. But by now David understood that he could not win this fight against the creatures. The bullets were almost finished, and there wasn't enough food left for long. The next day, while walking outside the lighthouse, David saw a ship in the distance. He quickly ran inside, grabbed the flare gun, and was about to signal the ship, but Gruner stopped him. Gruner didn't want David to leave the island. At that moment, Ananias attacked Gruner, trying to protect David. She wanted him to escape, but Gruner didn't want anyone to leave. For him, this island was his own world, where he lived like a king. After being alone for so long, he now had someone to talk to David. If David left, he would go to the ship and tell the world about Gruner and Ananias. That's why Gruner was ready to stop him at any cost. Slowly, the ship disappeared into the sea right in front of David's eyes. He felt helpless. Days went by. Gruner continued treating both David and Ananias badly. He especially beat Ananias, which David hated. One day, David made a small toy boat from a fish bone and gave it to Ananias as a gift. When Ananias saw it, she took David to a hidden part of the island. There, a real boat was kept. When David asked Gruner about it, Gruner admitted that he already knew about the boat. He explained that some people had once come to the island, trying to save themselves, but none of them survived until morning. The creatures killed them all. Their ship, full of ammunition, had sunk near the island during a storm. Hearing this, David got an idea. He had something like a diving suit. He said, if one of us wears the suit and goes to the place where the ship sank, maybe we can find bullets or dynamite. Then it will be easier to fight the creatures. But Gruner refused. He didn't want to take that risk. David, however, was ready to risk his life to try. A few more days passed. In that time, David and Ananias grew closer. David began to like her, and there was a deep connection between them. Gruner secretly saw them together. He felt jealous and thought Ananias might be taken away from him. So, he decided David had to be removed. The next day, surprisingly, Gruner agreed to listen to David's plan. He told David, you will wear the diving suit, go into the water, and collect the RDX. Then I will pull you back up with the boat. But Gruner's real plan was different. He wanted David to bring the dynamite boxes up from the sea and then leave him down there so the creatures would kill him. That way, Gruner would get the dynamite and Ananias would again be his slave. Both of them took the boat to the place where the ship had sunk. David wore the diving suit and went down into the sea. When he looked around, he saw that the ship was completely destroyed. Luckily, he found some dynamite boxes. But suddenly, a few creatures appeared. Seeing them, David got scared and fell. Because the diving suit was very heavy, he could not move properly, and he also could not signal Gruner for help. Gruner thought the creatures had killed David, but actually, they were only two small children of the creatures. Somehow, David managed to take off the heavy suit and escape. He reached the surface and found some old boxes that contained dynamite. After that, both David and Gruner started preparing their work. They placed dynamite in 2 layers around the lighthouse so that in the next attack they could kill all the creatures at once. A few months passed and the snowfall season came, but once again, the creatures disappeared. Suddenly, the attacks had stopped, as if they had come to know about the trap. That's why they were not attacking. Gruner thought Ananias had warned the creatures, so he started torturing her, but David stopped him. Finally, both of them made a new plan. They decided to keep the main gate of the lighthouse open. Their idea was that when the creatures came inside, they would blow them up with dynamite. David used his cleverness and told Ananias to scream from the top of the lighthouse. Hearing her voice, all the creatures became angry. When they saw the main gate open, they thought this was their chance to free Ananias, but in reality, it was a trap. Soon, the creatures came out of the sea and headed straight toward the main gate. As soon as one attacked David, he fought back bravely and saved his life. When all the creatures reached the lighthouse, Gruner pressed the dynamite lever, but nothing happened. The blast failed. Actually, David had opened the connection earlier, and Gruner had forgotten to fix it again. David quickly ran upstairs and started fixing the wires of the dynamite. By that time, the creatures were already climbing the lighthouse. Gruner fought them alone to stop them. As soon as David finished the connection, he blasted the first layer of dynamite. Many creatures died in the explosion, but still many of them were left to attack the lighthouse. So Gruner blasted the second layer too. The huge blast made both David and Gruner faint. The next morning, when they woke up, they saw that Ananias was missing. Dead creatures were lying everywhere because of the explosion. Gruner was killing the injured ones who were still alive. Then David noticed a necklace on the neck of one of those creatures. Seeing that creature in pain, David felt pity. He realized he was wrong. The creatures he always thought were monsters were also living beings, just like humans. The only difference was that they could not speak. But for Gruner, this truth did not matter. After that day, the creatures never attacked again. Still, every night, the sound of crying came from the seashore. David now realized how much destruction he had caused. How many families had been broken. How many children had lost their fathers, all because of a misunderstanding. The next day, David saw some small children of those creatures in the sea. They were the ones who had lost their families. David made a circle of stones and placed the small toy boat in the middle, hoping Ananias would see it and come back. He waited for many hours, but Ananias never returned. The next morning, when David woke up, he saw Gruner sleeping. Beside him were some old belongings. Among them was a photo. When David looked at it, he was shocked. The woman in the photo was the same girl whose picture he had seen in the diary of Officer Robert on his first day. And in the photo, she was standing with Gruner. That's when David understood the truth, whether Officer Robert, who had come a year earlier, had not died. He had changed his identity and become Gruner. He changed his name because he never wanted to leave the island. After learning this, David also lost all hope that he would ever escape the island. The next evening, when David went to the seashore, he noticed that the small toy boat he had placed in the stone circle was gone. Instead, he saw a small creature child holding that boat in his hands. David threw the burning wood he was holding into the middle of the circle to show that he did not want to fight. He wanted to make peace and be friends. After some time, Nereus came out from the waves of the sea, and behind her, a whole group of creatures also appeared. But this time, none of them attacked David. They also wanted peace. Their only wish was to find a safe place for their children. But suddenly, Gruner arrived with a gun in his hand. Gruner believed that if peace was made, he would lose his power. David tried to explain to him that these creatures no longer wanted to fight, they wanted peace. But Gruner refused to listen. He shouted at Nereus, ordering her to come back to him. But for the first time, Nereus did not obey. She was no longer his servant. Seeing this, Gruner felt that he had lost all power over the island. He felt weak inside because no one was following his orders anymore. In anger, he went back toward the lighthouse. David thought that maybe now Gruner had understood that every creature wants freedom, no one wants to live as a slave. But Gruner did not want to give up his power as king. As soon as he reached the lighthouse, he fired a flare gun. The flare hit one of the creature's children, and the child died instantly. All the other creatures ran away in fear, and Nereus also lost her trust in David. Filled with anger, David ran to the lighthouse to confront Gruner. He shouted at him, "Why did you do this? They only wanted peace." Then David started fighting with him, but Gruner had gone mad with violence. He raised an iron rod, ready to kill David. At that moment, David shouted his real name, "Stop, Robert. You are not a murderer." Hearing this, Gruner stopped immediately. The truth was that Robert was never such a cruel man, but after coming to the island, his mind had become weak. Loneliness, the death of his wife, and deep sadness had changed him. He was not really a killer, he was once a good man. Gruner finally understood that the creatures never wanted to fight. They only wanted peace. He had killed them only to feel powerful. Now he realized his mistake. So, he gave himself up to the creatures, and within moments, they killed him. David locked himself inside the lighthouse. Time passed. After 1 year, a government officer arrived at the island along with a new weather officer. Now the new weather officer had to take charge of monitoring the weather on this island. When the captain asked David about the last officer, David gave the same reply, that he went into the sea and never came back. The new officer also thought that David was actually Gruner. David did not correct their misunderstanding. He quietly walked to the balcony and stood there, saying nothing. Now, like Gruner, he also did not want to leave the island. Meanwhile, Nereus was happy with her family. They no longer feared a man like Gruner. They could now live freely on the island as well as in the sea. And with this, the story ends.